Poland is an exciting country, and this is a road trip that I've been looking forward to sharing in full. But I do feel like exciting is not the right word to use. If you look across YouTube, you'll find tons of videos about every major city claiming to have found the hidden gem, or that it's Europe's most underrated city. And yes, the cities are amazing, and all have their own unique vibe and character. But you'll also discover countless examples of human suffering, not just in one place, but in almost every place. Most people know about the World War II concentration camps, and these are heavy places to visit. But what I also noticed was that most cities had countless examples of both heroic rebellion and human suffering. Not only from the Nazi occupation of the country, but from the 50 years of communist totalitarian rule that followed. And from events as simple as protesting workers' rights that led to deaths of citizens en masse, politically driven arrests, or people just disappearing in their dozens. Not many countries had a more turbulent 20th century than Poland, and I think it's important to experience the country with this context in mind and to take a few extra moments when you stumble across small memorials or monuments throughout the cities. It's also worth noting that so many of the historical centres in the cities have been meticulously rebuilt to preserve their history. The architecture is old world, but has a unique polish to them because the structures are relatively new. Then you have the modern side of Poland, where commercial centres are thriving and the roads and transport infrastructure is as good as you'll find in any other Western country that I've visited. But it was the regions away from the cities that made the biggest impression on me, with some of the most stunning landscapes that I just didn't expect to find. I love exploring a country by road where you can bounce between city life and nature, and Poland had this in spades, which makes it an incredible road trip destination. Before hitting the road, we're starting with a couple of days in the capital city of Warsaw. The Old Town and Castle Square being the central attractions and a great starting point to explore this city on foot. The area is lined by a city wall that replicates an 800-year-old fortification that surrounded the original city. In the middle of it all is the Old Market Square, which is a hype of activity during the days and evenings. It's quite small compared to some other Polish cities, but feels grand when in the centre. Highlights of the Old Town for me was the Cold War Museum and the statue of the Little Insurrectionist, which is a tribute to the child soldiers who fought in the Warsaw Uprising, an event I'll come back to shortly. A walk past the castle along the royal route is a must, with a detour through Saxon Gardens, past the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and towards the Palace of Culture and Science. Warsaw has a number of large museums, including the Royal Castle, which we passed earlier, the Poland Museum on the site of the Warsaw Ghetto, and the National Museum of Warsaw. But I chose to spend my last morning in town visiting the Warsaw Uprising Museum, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. It tells an incredible story of a rebellion against the Nazis in the later stages of World War II that was ultimately unsuccessful. This sign at the front door is something that stuck with me from my visit. Check out the full video on screen for more on Warsaw. But for now, it's time to hit the road. My first stopover was just 90 minutes from Warsaw in the city of Lodz, a place that was once the site of Europe's second largest Jewish ghetto in the time of the Nazi occupation. On the edge of town is Radegast Station, where a 140-metre long memorial hall, known as the Tunnel of the Deported, has been set up to commemorate the 200,000 victims of the Holocaust that passed through this point to board trains bound for extermination camps. There's a preserved train car at the end of the tunnel, which is a very confronting sight. It's small, uncomfortable, and I cannot imagine how many people were jammed in here for such a journey. It's not a popular stopover, and I only saw one or two other people in the large halls, but it does give you a very heavy feeling before venturing further into the former ghetto. You'll find memorials scattered throughout this area and occasionally a building marked with a small plaque. But generally, the historical significance of the area is pretty low-key. If you're here to learn, you may be better off jumping on a guided tour. But just walking the streets and observing can be a powerful experience on its own. I get the feeling things haven't changed that much since the 1940s. And it's quite a contrast to what you'll find closer to the centre of town. There's a bustling shopping district that's in the middle of gentrifying. You'll see plenty of modern buildings and some derelict ones in between. Mix in some street art and it's a very unique stopover in Lodz. Next, I'm on my way to Poznan, a city that I'd never heard of, but was in a convenient position on the map to stay for the night. But it's now a city that I would recommend to anyone visiting Poland. Not only is it a fun place that's easy to explore in just a day or two, but I also sampled possibly the best pastry I've ever had in my life. But first, a quick shout out to the Focus Hotel. It was great value and a really nice home base while I was staying in Poznan. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to check it out. The Old Market Square in Poznan was surprisingly bigger than the capital of Warsaw, with an epic town hall that towered in the centre. There's a strange feature here in the clock tower, where two goat puppets come out and headbutt each other every day at noon. This is based on a local legend, but is a ritual I wouldn't necessarily plan my day around. The nearby merchant houses are very colourful and add a unique touch to the square. Other landmarks of significance nearby include the Farah Church, the Royal Castle, and Freedom Square, which is a big open space that is used for events such as the Poznan Christmas markets and various large-scale gatherings. The main feature is the Freedom Fountain, which is a very unique structure, but it's also surrounded by some grand architecture, with the library and National Museum really standing out. The latter is worth checking out if you want to see some Polish art. They also have Claude Monet's Beach in Pourville on display, but this section was closed when I visited. At the opposite end of the square is a memorial to another Polish uprising that took place in 1919. While there's not much around to explain this event further, it is a reminder of just how complicated the history of this city has been. A little further out of the centre, and you'll also find the Imperial Castle, the Grand Theatre, and surrounding gardens, plus a few more goats. Or if you're looking for a slower pace, on the edge of town you can just hang out by the water's edge. I had two things on my to-do list for the second day in Poznan before I would hit the road again. The first was to start my day indulging in the local pastries, and my god, this was a treat. I know the city is well known for croissants, but I'd been tipped off to try the Jagorzhenka. My god, it is good. It's so creamy in the middle. The blackberries are so fresh and full of flavour, and the pastry's so flaky. Oh, I'm blown away. Obviously, I really enjoyed myself. The bakery was called Inna Piekania, and I'll include this in the description so you can also find it. It's a must visit if you're in town. I only had time for one more activity and had to choose between visiting a museum or heading out to the Środka district to see the famous neighbourhood mural and explore the area. I chose the former so that I could see a broader selection of Polish arts. Today is going to be a massive driving day due to the big detour I'm going to take to see the Crooked Forest in the northwestern corner of the country. A great way to turn a 2-hour drive from Poznan to Wrocław into 7. So, let's find out if it was worth it. The Crooked Forest is one of the most unusual places I have ever seen. The odd-shaped tree trunks were one thing, but even stranger was the location. I'd expected it to be at the end of a long hike, deep in the forest, this natural anomaly that someone stumbled across one day. It is nothing of the sort, and any expectations of mystique I had going in were quickly tempered once I saw what was around. It's just off to the side of the road, behind an old apartment building with a row of wooden garages, separated by a big industrial pipeline of some sort. In fact, you got to walk right under this thing to get there. It's also quite small and confined to an area that looks like it was cleared and the trees strategically planted. This makes the Crooked Forest even more intriguing because it's not known to be either of those things, but it could have been. This all combines for something that is just a weird experience. It is strange to look at, and it's even stranger to walk around. It's eerily quiet, but not at the same time. If it wasn't for things like that, it'd be a very eerie place. I don't know if you can hear that off in the distance, but that big industrial factory thing over there, there's a drill going off. A surprising number of trees had been cut, which I found unfortunate, as were the people who felt the need to lay down on the base of the twisted trunks just to get a photo. Combine that with the sunbeds, and let's just say it wasn't what I expected. Certainly glad that I drove out for this. It's going to be a long drive back. Would I do it again? Probably not, but I'm glad I did at least once. So that little detour added 4.5 hours of driving to my day. And what better way to cap off a long day of driving than a massive storm while trying to navigate an unfamiliar city. It was absolutely bucketing down on arrival to the point where I couldn't see any markings on the road due to the torrential downpour and pooling water. The amount of hours this drive has taken and the amount of fatigue from dealing with this storm, I'm not sure I still believe my previous statement about the drive being worthwhile. On the plus side, the rain will be gone by the morning, so I should get a cloudy but nice day in Wroclaw or Warsaw, or I'll practice that one. And what better way to finish the day than a 100-meter sprint through absolutely torrential rain to get back to the hotel. Better make sure my passport, headphones and phone are zipped up in my pocket so they don't fall out as I'm jumping over massive puddles. So, wish me luck. And of course I went 100 meters in the wrong direction. That way. I was looking forward to checking out some of the restaurants and nightlife, but it was a complete washout. Instead, it was straight to bed for an early start the next morning. Wrocław is another incredible city to explore on foot and is known for its army of tiny bronze gnomes scattered around the city. What started as a form of graffiti from anonymous protesters against a communist government back in the 1980s has since become a bit of a signature for the city, with over 600 of these characters to be found. So make sure you watch your step. It would be very easy to stub a toe or trip over some of these little fellas. We're once again going to start at the Old Market Square. Every city seems to have one, but this was the biggest and most colourful yet. So that storm we drove through last night, unfortunately that put a stop to any nighttime plans to get amongst the city's nightlife and have a nice dinner somewhere. And as you can see from all of these stalls that are closed now, that if it were not for the weather, this place would have been absolutely buzzing and it would have been a good time. Oh well, you can't do much about the weather, but enjoying a couple of drinks outside in the shadows of this huge church and in the middle of this magnificent square would have been fantastic. The edge of the square is lined with colourful townhouses that are all uniquely decorated. They look spectacular from a distance, but then up close you get to see some of the detail which is equally impressive. All mixed in with a healthy dose of modern commercialism. Of course, no medieval town square is complete without a McDonald's right in the middle of it. This one has Burger King next door as well. The star of the square is the town hall, which has a relatively clean looking facade at the front, but a dark and gothic look at the rear of the building. In one corner, you'll also find the Salt Market Square. It is small in comparison, but it's a space that was very important 800 years ago. Other highlights you'll find when exploring on foot includes the Warsaw University, the Old Market Hall, Cathedral Island, which is actually the oldest part of the city, if you can get past these little fellas guarding the bridge, of course. The Warsaw National Museum, with its overgrown vine facade, and the Wrocławice Panorama, which is a museum that houses a 360-degree painting of an 18th century battlefield, plus a number of monuments to historical events and more human tragedies, with two of the more notable ones being the monument to the victims of the Katyn massacre in World War II, and an old building nearby where the wall has a mural of a priest on what remains of an obviously scarred building. The bullet holes all along the side is a stark reminder of what is a difficult past. Just a block from my hotel was the monument of the anonymous passerby. This fascinating sculpture shows 14 lifelike statues of people descending underground on one side of the road and then re-emerging on the other. It is intended as a memorial to those who were killed in a period of martial law in the 1980s, imposed by the communist government. But the place to get the picture-perfect postcard view of the city is at the top of Church of St. Elizabeth, but you're going to have to make the 300-stair climb to see it. Now, it's also very good to come early because, as you can see, the steps are very narrow, and without traffic going down as well as up, it's a lot easier. And of course, me stopping to show you that gives me a chance to catch my breath, because it is steep. The staircase is narrow and has to accommodate two-way traffic. Most people walk painfully slowly, and it can really take a chunk out of your day once it gets crowded. I had no such trouble on the way up, and the views are the best in town. It is simply stunning up there. You could easily spend 2 or 3 days in Warsaw, and it's a really fun and interesting city that is a must on your Poland road trip. And before you leave, make sure you put aside a little extra time just to go gnome hunting. After a few city-heavy days, it was time to head to the Ojcow National Park to go hiking for the day. Just a reminder that I'll have every destination listed in the description so you can find how they're spelt, because it's a bit different to how it sounds. This would make a great day trip from Krakow if that was your home base, with the park being just under an hour from the city. I found it difficult to find good information about the area prior to arrival, and all the maps are in Polish when you get there. But once I figured things out, it was actually very easy to navigate. Most hiking trails are on either side of a small river that runs through a valley, and in the centre there's a mini town with accommodation and restaurants. I don't think you can drive a car all the way in there, but there is paid parking on the fringes. The north side, where the castle is located, would be the most convenient place to park. I parked on the total opposite side, of course, but that just meant a few more steps for the day. I did a 7-kilometre nature trail hike, which I'll also link in the description. This covered a loop through the valley and up high on the eastern side where there were some great views on offer. The trail was almost deserted in some areas, which led to one encounter that scared the absolute shit out of me. With no one around, I noticed something staring at me out of the corner of my eye. It took me a moment to realise that it was actually a life-size model of a Neanderthal sitting in a cave. I've since learned that remains of Neanderthals have been found in the area, which I thought was an interesting takeaway. The castle at the north end of the valley is also worth checking out. It's not a grand structure, but its position overlooking the valley and the way the drawbridge was constructed I thought was very cool and gave a window into a time gone by. I made my way back to the car park via the Krakow gate and up towards the caves, where I also did a short underground tour. It's worthwhile if you have the time, but it's not a must-see. But the highlight was this unexpected feed I got in the middle of the day while I was in the small village. I stopped at the service station and got a Snickers bar and a punnet of tomatoes as hiking snacks. But instead, I have a whole trout, pickles,
and sauerkraut in this setting. That's a pretty big upgrade and one I was not expecting. I'm in love.
Now, after covering around 10 kilometers on foot for the day, I'd hoped for a short drive and an early night in Krakow. But there was a narrow window of sunshine in the weather forecast in the south of Poland, so I had to jump at the opportunity and head straight to Zakopane, where I would get at least 1, maybe 2 days of glorious weather before it would take a turn for the worse. So despite the fatigue of that drive, it was the best decision I made all trip, but more on that soon. In the meantime, I had to find a last-minute hotel room that was at least in the general direction. It was already close to 8 p.m, and by the time I got back to the car, I didn't have much driving in me. So I found a very strange roadside hotel that was massive, but mostly empty. Thankfully, there was a restaurant on site, as I would have been going hungry otherwise. It was very fancy considering how isolated it was, so the food was expensive, but also pretty tasty. And I couldn't resist another Polish soup, with a side of vegetables and a nice dessert to finish, which was my reward for a big day, along with a couple of wines, of course. After dragging myself out of bed as early as I could, I was delighted to see clear blue skies in every direction. But it was not going to last. I have 36 hours at best before the storms return to make the most of the Tatras Mountains and Zakopane. First, we'll be hiking to the peak of Mount Giewont, and then tomorrow to Morskie Oko. Both are incredible days out and not to be missed. The first task of the day is to get all the way from the car to Kuznica. This is the starting point for 5 or 6 different hiking trails that take off in almost every direction. But that initial walk ended up much longer than I expected.
Well, the weather has come up absolutely gorgeous, but it's also Sunday, so there's people everywhere, which is fine. I was just hoping to get a bit of an earlier start, but by the time I did the rest of the drive and found a parking spot, that was the tough part. It's getting close to 10 in the morning, which I imagine it's going to be peak time on the trail on a Sunday morning on a day like this. So we'll see how we go. Should still be a cracking day. I wish I was here at 6 a.m.
From Kuznica, you have the option to take the cable car all the way to the top of the mountain. But we're here for the journey, not just the destination. A little further along and you pay your entry fee, plan your route, and you're ready to hit the trail. After heading through some thicker forest, we come to the Schronisko na Hale Kondratowe, an open pasture with nice flowers that lead up to a series of lush green mountains off in the distance. This is an important spot because it's from here that things start to get increasingly difficult. But this is nothing compared to what we're in for when we get to the foot of these distant mountains. This is the steepest part of the hike, but you'll be rewarded frequently along the way with multiple viewing points back over the valley that become increasingly spectacular the higher you get. When you finally make it to the top of this section, there's a big flat area that serves as a junction where you can head up to the Kontratowa Kova, but I'm headed in the opposite direction towards Giewont. This is the final section to get to the peak, and it will be the most crowded part of the hike. You need to use the chains as you move higher, and it gets very unsafe to pass people any other way. But you'll be at the top in no time, along with a lot of other people if you don't get that early start. If you'd like to see this hike in much more detail, check out the video linked on screen now. Or we can just take a moment to enjoy the view. There are dangerous drop-offs all around, so you have to tread carefully and be aware of your surroundings at all times. And be prepared for a much slower trip back down. You can take an alternative route on the way down so you can see more of the Tatras. and some of the views in the opposite direction are equally as stunning, and you'll have a great time no matter which route you choose. There are some smaller peaks to climb that are tough to do on tired legs, but also have some worthwhile views of both the mountains where we came from and back over the town of Zakopane. I've only shown some of the highlights of what was an incredible day. Check out the video on screen for the full experience. And I ended up in a part of town that was a fun little market area with lots of food options, drinks, activities and souvenirs. All I needed now was to find where the car was and figure out where I was going to stay that night. It was easy to book a cheap hotel at the last minute, but I really hesitate to pronounce this one. Now, as much as I didn't feel like doing any more walking today, the town was not too far away and I needed to find somewhere for dinner because I was starving. The town was really bustling at this hour, but it was still relatively easy to get a table at a nice restaurant. The Christina Pizzeria is highly recommended. I thought the food was exceptional and the wine very tasty as well. I still had just enough energy in the legs to find a cocktail somewhere, dessert or both.
Yep.
I found it hard to believe that anything could top the day prior, but on day 2, we're headed to Morskie Oko. Once I get there, I don't think you'll have any trouble figuring out which one I liked the most.
So the forecast last night was for rain all today, but there was a small window of 2 hours from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. where the sun was going to come out. So I've taken the gamble, got here early, and you can just see the sun peeking its head over the mountains there. So I'm hoping that that lasts for at least a couple of hours before the clouds roll in again. So looks like we're going to get lucky. Yes.
There really isn't that much to see along this long, flat road. Today, it really was just about the destination. And on arrival, it felt like I had walked into a grand cauldron of nature. Yes, I'd seen plenty of photos of the place, but nothing could prepare me for the real thing. And I will admit to being a bit overwhelmed by it all. There's a hiking trail that goes all the way around the lake with an extra climb to a second lake right up there, and that's where we're headed. I was now just over 10 kilometers and 2.25 hours from the car, and it was worth every step. I could have sat here all day, but that weather forecast was in the back of my mind, so it was time to start the long journey back to the car and continue around the lake to complete the full loop. The moment where you first come around the corner and lay your eyes on this incredible panorama, it's just one of those special moments. So I'm about to walk back around that corner, and I don't want you to see it because it's the sort of thing you just have to experience for yourself. So make sure you get out here one day so you can. Now for the long, long walk back to the car. The only remaining question is, can I beat the rain? Because it's coming. Well, you can't win them all. The rain has come. That light rain turned into absolutely torrential rain a few minutes later. I've just been sitting here in the car like a zombie for about 20 minutes. That last half an hour, it absolutely bucketed down with rain. You can see it's still going, so I really feel bad for everyone that's still up there. My jacket is soaking wet, my shoes absolutely drenched. Luckily, I was able to change most wet things. My wet shorts are still on, and now the car seat's half wet. So that early start to get that little window before the bad weather kicked in made all the difference. I'm not so sure I'd be that keen to go out in this kind of weather when you're starting out, because you got 5 hours to go there and back,
and it's going to be cold and miserable. Yeah. So I timed it well. So I think I'm done with the mountains for now. So once I feel ready to drive, be heading in the direction of Krakow, where I'll be able to stay in the same hotel for the next 3 nights. Yes. Big feed on the way. I think I've earned that much. Then an easy afternoon, and hopefully, if the weather is better up there, can start checking out Krakow later tonight. So that will be the final destination for the road trip, but I've still got a few more day trips to do outside of Krakow, but I'm so excited to stay in the same place for a few days.
So I had taken full advantage of my narrow weather window and hiked just over 50 kilometres in 3 days. And while I was a bit sore, I was full of enthusiasm now to get back to city life. But I still have the car for another day or two, and we're not done with the road tripping just yet. I was really stoked with the Krakow accommodation. It was spacious, had a full kitchen and a nice balcony, and was just a few minutes walk to all the best parts of the city. Despite my tired legs, I did go for a wander around the Jewish quarter, tried out some of the food, and just kept on going past Wawel Castle and eventually ending up in the Old Town Square once again. After so many cities in such a short period of time, I'm learning that the town square is like a fingerprint to each city, unique in its own way, and no two are the same. And Krakow can boast the biggest. The dimensions are roughly 200 metres on each side, and it's a hive of activity in every corner, even underground. In the centre is the Town Hall Tower and Cloth Hall, where you'll find plenty of souvenir vendors if that's your thing. St Mary's Basilica stands out in the corner, which I assume is far more impressive once the scaffolding is removed. There are restaurants and bars all around, just as you'd expect. But at night time, there are also food markets, and they're a lot of fun to explore. You can grab a beer and try out all the local specialties, including lots of different types of sausage. It was my last day with the car, so I'm heading back out of the city towards the Bochnia salt mine and the Novi Višnjić castle. While this was an interesting day out, I wouldn't necessarily recommend either stop unless you have serious interest in them. Bochnia is not as touristy as the other salt mines around Krakow, and you'll have a hard time finding an English tour guide. So I ended up on a private tour by default, which ended up costing much more than I would have considered paying to see a salt mine. But something I do want to share was what I found in this underground complex that was built into the mine, complete with a dance floor for underground parties, bunk beds where you can sleep about 60 people, a restaurant, some basic sporting facilities, and the longest slide that I have ever seen. Apparently, this thing goes all the way up from the surface down into the depths of the mine. It was decommissioned due to the frequent injuries that people would get riding it, but after complaints from the locals, many of which had been playing on this thing since they were kids, it is now going to be partially rebuilt. So it should be a bit safer in the future when it's not hundreds of meters long, and once this is finished, it would be an incredible thing to come and do. So maybe wait for that before you visit the Bochnia salt mine. As for the castle, I thought it looked amazing from the outside, and if you're nearby, it's worth a stopover. The interior I found less interesting, but that's just me. I was keen to get back to Krakow, which I'm already loving based on the night before. Highlights in the city for me were the National Museum of Krakow, which houses Leonardo da Vinci's Lady with an Ermine. When I first located the painting in the museum, I had about 90 seconds in the room all by myself, which I thought was a really special moment. Wawel Castle, which is so big that it has 8 different ticketed areas. Again, my favourite part was just strolling around and looking at the grounds and the exterior of the castle, which is free.
So I'm glad I got here early because there's almost no one standing here in the courtyard. And standing here in the relative quiet and spaciousness, the scale of it is pretty unbelievable.
Just on the fringes of the city, is the Krakow Mound, which is the best place in town to catch the sunset. Add in the more rustic but trendy Jewish quarter and the massive market square we looked at earlier, and this really is an incredible city with a lot to discover. Check out my deep dive into Krakow on screen now, because there's so much more to talk about. And of course, we cannot move on from Krakow without mentioning a day trip to Auschwitz. It's not an experience that I want to talk about on this video, as I could never do it justice. But I do encourage everyone to jump on a guided tour and experience it for yourself. It's a heavy but important pilgrimage to make, and the guides do a really excellent job in helping you feel the gravity of the place while being really informative and respectful of the grounds. And while we're finishing the road trip on such a sober note, I do hope that this video has inspired you to hit the road and check out more of what this amazing country has to offer. The cities are fantastic, but there really is a lot to discover in between. And if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching, I really appreciate it. Be sure to check out some of the other road trip videos on the channel, comment below if there's anything more you'd like to see from Poland, and of course hit the subscribe button.